This is the new variable ND filter from K&F Concept. So before we get into the video, a little disclaimer. Yes, K&F Concept did send me this ND filter for a review, but this isn't a sponsor video. I'm not getting paid to do this. They're not seeing this video before I post it. So this is my true and unbiased opinion about this filter. And by the end of this video, if you're interested in picking one of these up, there are links in the description down below. And they are affiliate links, which basically means that I get a very, very small commission if you decide to buy one of these, which really does help out the growth of this channel. And if you're watching this video, you probably already know what an ND filter is, but if you don't know, an ND filter, or in this case a variable ND filter or neutral density filter, basically means that it's a filter we put on the front of our camera, and it's like putting sunglasses on a camera. It reduces the amount of light going into the lens and hitting the camera sensor. And this being a variable ND filter basically means it spins, which gives you more control over how much light the filter reduces. And there are quite a few reasons why you would actually want to use an ND filter, or in this case a variable ND filter. One reason could be to take long exposure pictures in the day. This means that we can decrease our shutter speed, which would usually let in a lot of light. But having an ND filter on our lens means that we can reduce the amount of light coming in, so we can get some really cool and unique pictures which are not possible without an ND filter. And another reason, and actually my main reason of why I use a ND or a variable ND filter, is to use it whilst filming, and specifically when we're filming outside. And when filming, usually we want to follow the 180-degree shutter rule. And that basically means that we want to have a shutter speed double our frame rate. So for instance, I would film at 25 frames a second, so my shutter speed needs to be 1/50th. And this usually results in an overexposed shot, especially when filming outside. So to reduce that exposure, we would then usually have to increase our aperture, which will make our image darker but will decrease the depth of field. So our background will become more in focus, which is probably not what we actually want. Even reducing the ISO to its lowest setting in super bright conditions, this isn't even enough, and our image is still overexposed. So putting the ND filter onto our lens means that we can now be in control of the exact camera settings we want, and also be in control of the amount of light coming in and hitting that camera sensor. So being a variable ND filter means that we can increase or decrease the amount of light coming into the camera sensor without actually having to play around or mess around with the actual camera settings. And this filter states that it can go from ND2 up to ND400, which is 9 stops. So this should take out more than enough light, especially when we're filming. The build quality of the filter has actually surprised me quite a lot. I thought it was going to feel a little bit plasticky, a little bit cheap, a little bit flimsy considering the price, but actually I'm very surprised by how good and high quality it actually feels. The glass has 39 multi-layer coatings, which they state reduces reflections and glaring, ensuring a high quality image. They also state that the filter is water resistant, which I assume means that water shouldn't get down between those two spinning sections, and they also say that it is scratch resistant, or the glass is scratch resistant as well. I'm not going to try that out. I don't want to scratch it and potentially break it, but if they say it's scratch resistant, I hope it is scratch resistant. The outer of the filter is aluminium, which has this extra orange lever on it, which I really like. And this makes it super easy to actually spin the filter around. And yes, we're currently in the summer at the moment, but I already know that if I'm going to be using this in the winter and it's going to be really cold and I've got big thick gloves on, that having that lever there is just going to make it super easy for me to actually spin that filter around. I don't have to worry about trying to fumble around in my gloves to try spinning that filter. That lever just gives us an extra little bit to actually spin it around. Sometimes I find with other variable ND filters, I actually end up unscrewing the filter off of the lens as I'm gripping the spinning section too hard and just end up unscrewing the whole thing. But this filter seems like they've really thought about the design. When the filter is on, it protrudes the lens by 7.3mm, which is slightly thicker than other filters I've used, but with this design it has a pretty good 50-50 split from the front and the back of the filter, making it easier to just spin the back when putting it onto the lens. Both the front and the back spinning sections have ridges on it, which increases our grip so it's easier to screw on and off of our lens. Other variable NDs have this teeny tiny section, literally like 1mm, which you have to screw onto the lens, where this K&F Concept one, because it has that 50-50 split, has such a lot more to actually grip on to make it super easy to put on and off of a lens, where other variable NDs make it so difficult because you just end up spinning the variable ND and not being able to actually grip the bit which goes onto the lens. There are marks on the side of the filter so we can actually identify the ND strength. But there are no hard stops or notches on this filter, it just spins all the way around. I tend to spin the filter until it's super dark or super bright and then adjust it accordingly to the actual brightness I want, as I tend to not really use the marks on the side of the filter. And this is usually because when I screw it onto a lens, the marks seem to be on the wrong side or upside down from the actual lens itself, which makes it slightly awkward to actually see the marks on that filter. Your left hand is usually the one which is on the lens, so for me I want those marks to be on the left hand side, but if they don't line up then we can't actually see them. But that issue really does depend on what lens we're putting the filter on. Some lenses might have a longer thread so we actually spin it on further and those marks might line up on that left hand side. With our left hands we can see exactly what position the ND filter is in. Other lenses might have a lesser thread so it's kind of facing the other way. You could potentially over tighten the filter on to get those marks to actually line up where you want them. I don't really see the point of doing that. I don't really want to over tighten it and potentially get it stuck and not be able to undo it. I just think you tighten it on and like I said, you just twist the variable ND to the actual brightness or darkness you actually want it. I don't really have an issue with not being able to see the marks on the actual side of the filter. And I have to admit, when I first used the filter, I was slightly disappointed that there wasn't any hard stops or notches on the filter. It just span freely all the way around. But the more I used it, the more I actually liked it that it just kept on spinning. And like I just said, with that issue with those marks maybe not lining up exactly on the lens, if it did have a hard stop, that you might not actually find that the kind of orange notch, that orange section, might be in the wrong place for you and might make it slightly awkward. But because it does freely spin all the way around, we can basically get it kind of where we actually want it, and it's kind of more user-friendly that way. And when it's on the lens and we are spinning the variable ND around, the resistance is really nice and firm, and it gives us confidence that you aren't going to easily knock it out of place when handling the camera. And there really isn't any play within the two layers. Again, making it feel nice and solid and well built and not cheap and flimsy. And in the box we also get this smart looking carry case, which I feel like has been designed more for its looks rather than its actual performance. It is made of this fake leather with a magnetic flap, and on the side we have this little strap which if we pull it lifts the filter out of the case so we can get it out without getting our greasy fingers all over the actual filter itself. But one thing we have to just be careful with is when we pull this strap, if you pull it too fast, it can potentially come flying out of the actual case, and we don't want to do that because we could easily drop it. So we just have to make sure that we don't pull that strap too fast and it comes flying out of the actual case. So yes, the case does look cool, but personally I'd like something that would protect it a little bit more. It feels a little bit flimsy and I can't see it protecting the filter in my bag, especially if something is knocked up against it. Also, the case isn't completely sealed, so any dust or dirt could easily get inside and potentially scratch the actual filter. Even though that it states that it's scratch resistant, I don't want to take that extra risk. So personally, I think I'd feel a little bit more confident if the actual case was a hard case, maybe a nice metal tin case or something. No bigger than it actually is because I want it to be nice, small and streamlined to fit in my bag, but I feel like a hard case is going to protect it more and stop kind of dust and grit and dirt getting into the actual gaps of this case. Even though it does look cool, I feel like a hard case would probably be better and give me a little bit more confidence in protecting it. But anyway, moving back to the actual look and performance of this filter. As you can see here, there is a slight colour shift towards orange, but nothing dramatic and nothing that we can't fix in post. And the sharpness of this filter is actually really good. I don't think you can really see any difference unless you really start to go pixel peeping. I haven't really noticed any vignetting. There is a big dark cross that goes across the image when we go past the darkest section of the ND filter. But I haven't noticed any bad vignetting or crosses in the actual usable range of the ND. And K&F Concept do offer a wide range of sizes to fit most lenses, from 62mm up to 82mm, which does affect the price slightly, so depending on which one you get depends on what price you actually pay. And if you have multiple lenses at multiple different sizes, I would personally say to get the filter for the largest lens you actually have. Doing this means that we can buy a cheap step-up ring to be able to use that filter on all your different lenses. I went for the 77mm filter, which fits most of my lenses, but it doesn't actually fit on the lens I'm filming this video on, which is the Sigma 18 to 35mm, which is actually 72mm. So to get around this, I bought a 72 to 77mm step-up ring, so I can now use the larger 77mm filter on the smaller 72mm Sigma lens. And this is by far the easiest and cheapest workaround, so you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of these variable ND filters to go on all your different lens sizes. Just buy a few different ones of these little step-up rings depending on the size of your lens, and it could just go onto the one ND filter and it will go onto all of your lenses. And personally, I would actually say that this variable ND filter is my new favorite variable ND filter, and probably one of the best variable ND filters I've actually used. It's high quality, it's a reasonable price, and it's so easy to use, especially with that little orange tab on there. Just makes spinning it around super easy, and I will definitely be continuing using this on my lenses going forward. And like I said, this isn't a sponsor, this isn't a paid video or anything like this. This is my true and unbiased opinion about this filter, and if you are interested in picking one of these up yourself, I will link it in the description down below, and also I will link the step-up rings as well in the description down below if you want to pick up a few of these to adapt it onto different lenses. And if you're not already, please hit the subscribe button to be notified when my next videos go live, because I've also got a brand new lightweight, super lightweight travel tripod from K&F Concept as well, which I'm going to be putting a review out very, very soon. So make sure you subscribe to be notified when that video goes out. If you found this video interesting and informative, please give it a like. It really does help out. And until next time, keep on creating.